My name is Era, and I'm the host of the Tamil Creator Podcast. I chat with creators from all over the world to share their stories and discuss hot topics in a way that I hope inspires, educates, and entertains you.
I'm cool.
I should ask you, how's business during the pandemic, and how's running this empire as like a mom of two now?
It's a lot. It's good though. I mean, I feel like I feel I'm finally in a place where I can step away and know that the team has it. You know, we went on a vacation for the first time in 4 years. I was still working. I took my laptop, but I didn't open it. So I was super happy about that. And I was still on my phone and I could talk to the team. But we finally, are in a place where I don't have to be there. And this is what I've been working for my entire, I think the journey of tiabhuva.com is to get to a place where I don't physically have to be in the office if I don't want to be. And especially with two kids, if I think back to why I started this, that was the whole point. So I feel like the last few weeks I've had a lot of full circle moments where we celebrate the big things like, hitting a number or, hiring or whatever. But I feel like we don't take the time sometimes just as humans to celebrate these little things. Like I started this because I wanted more time with my kids. And as much as, running a business has surprised me, I'm really happy that I was able to, just take some time off and not feel guilty and truly be present, because I think that's why I started. So
I love it. I mean, for those of you kind of just tuning in, I'm trying something new. So I'm going to now introduce who our speaker is if you haven't already guessed. So I'm very excited to be chatting with Tia Bhuva today. This is another episode of The Tamil Creator. For those of you who don't know her, she's the founder of tiabhuva.com. And let me see if I can describe your business. I'm going to probably butcher it, but high level, I think it's like selling sarees and saree accessories. But what you're really known for, kind of your flagship product, is the Saree Silhouette, which you describe as a yoga pants for sarees. Did I get that right?
that's perfect.
Yes, amazing. Okay. Well, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining, Tia.
Thank you so much for having me.
Why don't we kind of build off what you're just chatting about? So, in addition to kind of what I described, obviously your list of products and things you kind of are selling, you've kind of expanded throughout the years. So what do you currently sell beyond what I described? And we can go back to the beginning as well, like in terms of how the business even started and how it evolved over time.
Yeah, so what we currently sell is basically anything that I feel is a gap in the market when it comes to sarees. So on tiabhuva.com, we sell anything that helps you drape your saree and, quicker, better, and feel more comfortable, more beautiful, and just take the dread out of the saree wearing experience, which is what I think a lot of, young people and everyone feels sometimes. It's not something that we do every day in the West anyway. So I feel like that's why I started. And so every product that we put up, before when it was just me, it was like, will I wear this? Am I customer number one? And if I'm not customer number one, then I can forget about everyone else. And so that's my number one thing. And now I feel like we have a team where everyone is like, yeah, this is good. Or because we have more people, we can be like, okay, this is how we can make it better for this body type or, this experience. And so I feel like we are getting better as we grow to really put out products that, everyone would like. And I think that's the thing. I think, starting from yourself and your team and yeah.
And I know that obviously when you go to tiabhuva.com now, it's beautiful. Like you guys have thought of everything, but just like you look at version 1 of Facebook or just any platform e-commerce site, like, was it bad? And if so, how bad was it? And like, what was the process of like adding and improving to the site? Because I think people often get intimidated by seeing the final product of things. Like they looked at your site, they're like, oh, there's no way I can do anything even remotely like that. But you started at like, step 1, which was like just making a website or whatever you started as. So what was that for you? And then how did you go about tweaking your site or making those improvements?
Okay, so funny story. Up until March 2020, which wasn't that long ago because we started in July of 2017. So we're coming up on 5 years this July. But up until March 2020, every picture on the website was taken on my phone. And I'm not talking my iPhone Pro 13 Max now. No, I'm talking my iPhone. I want to say, what was it, six, seven? It was bad. It was really bad. And the thing is, I think we revamped it in March 2020, and that date is not a mistake because I had just quit my full-time job and we had made our first hire, Alicia, and she was obviously at that time, the business very much in our house and in our basement. And she was coming into the office and we were kind of ramping up to move into our first commercial space. And all of that came crashing down. And so I basically told her, remember, Alicia, how I told you that the website revamp we can do later this year when we're moved in? Yeah, it's now priority number one because I think every entrepreneur who was in the event space, so we sell apparel for events, and if there's no weddings, no one's buying. And literally we saw that plunge. It just literally plummeted our sales, and here we had 2 full-time people, including myself, on the payroll, and we had 0 sales. So that is why we have a new site. And that site, I mean, Alicia did an incredible job. We are actually working on now version 3, and it's going to be launched probably in July. We're working towards July, but yeah, it's version 2.0 with all Alicia and myself, and we finally had new pictures taken. The pictures actually weren't taken until late November 2020, so we had iPhone pictures until November 2020.
Well, I guess a question as well, even before your website, did you go from like this idea to kind of creating a website, or did you even do something before that, like a Facebook group or email list, or like informally doing anything? No, straight to the website.
No, it was straight to Shopify. I mean, I
Okay.
think when I started, it was very much, I think I looked at Etsy, and what was the other thing? I want to say Wix. Was it Wix? And I just basically Googled what will allow me to scale and not cost me a lot of money. And Shopify was the answer in 2017. So
And so building off like a comment you made where like obviously the core of why people buy on your site or buy products from you is centered around events. And obviously the pandemic made events irrelevant for a while, but they're coming back with a bang. How did you, I guess, like, what were your feelings? Like, were you like, this is it? Like, we're done for? Or like, were you like, you know what, this is temporary, we'll figure it out? Like, what was your mindset like when this all happened?
So I think if I hadn't quit, my reaction would have been different. So I'll take you back to a little bit of a timeline of how I quit and why I quit. So I was working for Walmart as a buyer, absolutely loved my job. But I remember a year before starting TiaBhuva.com, my friend had just come back from mat leave. So this is, I want to say 2016, early 2016. And I remember we used to carpool, and she was a buyer as well. And I remember those first few days, or, that first few weeks of driving with her in the mornings, she would be super emotional. I want to be at home with my daughter. She was a year old and she was in daycare. And I remember thinking to myself, and we wanted to start a family. I'm like, when we start a family, I hope I, have the option of not going back to work if I don't want to, because I want to be able to make that choice. And I knew that I couldn't just stay at home and not do anything, because I think I would become really annoying to everyone around me. So I knew I had to have something that I could work on. And so that's really what started it. I knew I always wanted to do something on my own, but I think I did fast track a little bit, just seeing my friend go through that, wanting to be home with her daughter. And then, yeah, I just started growing my social media. I knew, like, even dating back to our wedding, I knew this is 2016. So in 2016, now if you're planning a wedding, you're on Instagram. But in 2016, it was not so much the case. But I remember as I was planning my wedding, my friends, my cousin, would send me, Treasured Photography's Instagram page or AK Makeup's Instagram page. And I realized, I'm like, if I want to do something on my own and eventually leave this corporate life, I should have a social media presence. I just didn't think it would be in South Asian fashion. But what happened was that I started, I would make my account public. I'm sure everyone can relate to this. They would make their, account public. You'd get a bunch of trolls. You'd make it private, and I did that, for probably the first few months, and then I was just sharing random lifestyle content. And then I shared a picture of myself in a sari. I had 500 followers at that time, and I had got like 1,200 likes on that picture. And a lot of the comments were, how did you drape your sari? Why does your sari look so neat? How come mine doesn't look that way? And so it just organically evolved from there. And I think when I started with can skirts. So it was, just the super voluminous plain skirts that you could do, thousands of drapes on top of. And so that's what I was doing. But one of the things I did one summer, which I think it was 2016 or 2017 summer, was I would do comparison pictures where I'd be like, oh, here's the nivy drape, which is the regular drape that everyone knows, and it's the most popular drape with, pleats on the left shoulder and pleats in front. And then I drape the exact same sari over a can. And in those pictures, I would always wear yoga pants in the picture, because I just did not want to wear a regular underskirt. And then, my husband, Tony, was like, why don't you just wear those yoga pants when you go to weddings and you don't have to complain so much? And that's kind of how the Saree Silhouette came to be. It was like, okay, well, it doesn't exist, so let me create it. And but I think from there, then growing the business and kind of working full time, and this was very much a side hustle. When I got pregnant, so 2018, I got pregnant and I took an early mat leave. I had a pretty high-risk pregnancy until about 5 months. So I was working from home. Walmart was great. My boss was great about that, and so then I took an early mat leave. I think I took it at 7 months. So I was working from home and then took it at 7 months. And I basically told him, and my boss knew, most of my team, everyone at work knew about my side hustle. I never tried to keep it a secret just because it was on social media. It's not like you can,
Exactly.
my vendors would Google me before they come to meet me, and they'd be like, what is this sari? And I was trying to steer that conversation back to business because I was working in the food. I was a food buyer. And so I couldn't keep it a secret. If I didn't tell them, they would find out from my vendors. And I wanted to be the first to, I believe transparency is the best way, because you can kind of,
Control the narrative.
Exactly. And so I left on really good terms. So, I went on my mat leave and my boss was like, you're not coming back to yet. Like, I think you're going to hire me by the end of your mat leave. But then, so I was due back in April of 2020, but CBC, I got this opportunity with CBC where they wanted to feature me in their International Women's Day event, in March of 2020. And then they also wanted to do, they featured me in their morning show and then on their 6 o'clock news. And so I'm like, okay, there's 3 events with CBC, my coworkers are going to see this, my boss is going to see this. So I think I should just quit, because I was going to do that anyway, and I think at that point is when I realized, I'm like, okay, I need to bring on Alicia full time. This is really ramping up. I've just been kind of kicking the can down the road to, not make that decision, because it's a scary decision to make when you're used to a paycheck and stability, and that's all I'd ever known. And even though this was a dream, it's really hard to make that jump, regardless of what the numbers tell you. And so, yeah, I called up my boss in February, and I'm like, I wanted to tell you, I'm going to send in my resignation to HR. I'm not coming back. He's like, I knew it. Are you going to hire me? And I'm like, yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I think the timeline for me was especially scary, because so then March happened, and right before March 16th, February 1 is when Alicia started full time with us. Alicia's my first hire. She started freelance, then she worked as a contractor, and then we hired her full time. And that's when I basically put myself on payroll too. And then so here we are a month in, she comes and works in my basement. Sometimes she would work from home. And March, we had been looking for a space since probably the year before, like September, October, but we just hadn't found the perfect space. But we finally found the perfect space. We were in that middle, I guess that space time, real estate agents would know, where you kind of say yes, and then like there's closing hasn't happened. And so closing was March 30th. And so, March 16th rolls around. We're having a great year, like year over year, January to March was amazing. I'm like, okay, this is the right decision. We're doing great. Because again, not only am I having to, comp my previous year, because that's, I worked in retail. That's what you do. You comp your previous year. But I'm also having to prove to myself that, quitting was the right decision. And then March 16th comes and I'm like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? And it was hard because, it was not only me leaving my job, but it was also dealing with the pandemic. And then we backed out of the space. Thank God we had the option to do that, because I think I would have freaked out even more. And then, we were like, okay, what can we do? And we basically looked at everything that was on our back burner list, and started working on that, things like the site and, there's so many projects. We'd wanted to do like a more, build out our blouses, because we had very much focused on just staying in stock. That was the other thing. We needed to stay in stock because we were always just, again, our constraint was the 1,500 square feet that we had in my basement, right? So, I think that time period gave us, but it was so scary. Like, there's no sugarcoating it. It was scary. And I thought we were done. I asked Tony, I'm like, do I call my boss and say, I'm kidding, I'm coming back?
But they say great businesses are built during bear markets or situations like this. So I think you proved that out.
Yeah, thank God, because if I hadn't quit, if CBC hadn't reached out to do that segment on me and, be on that panel, I don't think I would have quit. And I think I would have waited till April, because I would have just been too scared and, kind of wanted to delay the decision. And then the pandemic would have happened and I would have been like, it's a sign, I shouldn't quit. And then I don't think tiabhuva.com would be where it is today. So I am so grateful that all of the, universal forces aligned.
I was going to ask, because it's pretty crazy that one small thing, it was not really small, it's a big opportunity, but someone deciding to call you for that segment literally change the trajectory of your business, your life. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, actually, you've featured her.
This episode is sponsored by nobody. That's right, nobody. So if you could be kind enough to hit that subscribe button, that would mean a lot to me.
Manjula.
Oh, Manjula, yeah.
She's the one who pitched me. I met her at a panel at the previous year
Tamil
for Mother's Day.
I think you were on there.
Yes,
right?
no,
yes.
she was on a panel for IBC Tamil.
Okay.
And it was like a Mother's Day event, and I met her, hit it off. She's an incredible person, and
yes.
Just so inspirational and impressive on all fronts. But she's one of those people who will bring your name up in a room that you're not in, and the way you said, the fact that you just said that, it made me realize, she's been super instrumental in our business. And I don't think I've ever told her that. I need to call her up and tell her that.
Well, she'll hear it. I think she listens to the podcast, so she'll hear it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Manjula, thank you.
Yeah, I think I met Manjula in 2010. She was speaking at a Tamil event, CTCC or something. She was the host. The event was pretty boring otherwise, but she was great. So I heard her story and I approached her after and said, "You're amazing." And that's kind of how I met and just stayed in touch with her. So she's definitely a force of nature, not in a in your face way, but just a very quiet, but very strong confidence about her. So
for sure. Yeah. And I can listen to her talk forever. The way she speaks, and just love her.
Yeah, you said so much. I had a bunch of questions. I'm where do I go next? But you kept mentioning Alicia, so we got to put Alicia on the spotlight. I feel when you're building a team, especially very early on, your first few hires are super important, because they could ultimately change the trajectory of your business. You have some bad hires, takes away from the energy and kind of momentum from the team. But you obviously seem to have found somebody amazing, because you mentioned her name 8 times, so she must be amazing. So tell us how you kind of found your early hires, and your philosophy for deciding if someone was going to be with you long term or not.
Yeah, so Alicia reached out. So when I was pregnant with Xavier, my first son, I was like, okay, I need help, because I can't, be customer service. At this time, the business was out of my house. I was doing customer service. I was a one-woman show, right? So I was like, I need help. And I put out a job posting, and sorry, can I have 2 minutes? I just want to make sure my son, I think I hear him crying.
No worries, go ahead. Yeah.
Give me a second.
Yeah. Did you know that every time you left a 5 out of 5 review for this podcast, a Tamil parent lets their child pursue a career in the creative arts? Okay, that's probably not true, but if there's a chance that it is, do you really want to jinx it? Leave a review. Do it for the young creative in you.
All right, we're good.
No problem.
Cody was just he's congested, so he was sucking his boogers out, and I'm like,
Ah.
oh my god, is he crying because he's fine.
No worries. I think we were talking about Alicia, kind of
Alicia,
how you hired and like she reached out to you, I think, and then yeah, I'll let you kind of
yeah.
continue.
So I put up a job posting. I want to say probably November of 2019, and no, sorry, 2018, and I was pregnant, so I'm like, okay, I'll go through all of these applications. And it was very much for a social media slash customer service position, freelance or contractor style. And I got a bunch of applications, but I didn't know where to start. I had done hiring before in my previous roles, like in my corporate jobs, but HR would usually screen them and then send you, 5 to choose from. And it was a lot easier. And I feel like when it's your business, obviously it's a little different because you're working so close with that person. And, it was out of my home. So this person would, come to know about where I lived and my family. And so it's a totally different ballgame, hiring in a corporate world versus when it's your own business and you are very much working out of your home. It's not just, okay, can they do the job? It's like, do I trust this person? Is this person gonna get along with my family? Do I want them in my house? It's all these questions that you don't normally ask yourself if you're hiring, in a regular corporate situation. So I didn't hire. And I remember, giving birth to his baby in January and, 2 hours later getting on my phone answering emails because I didn't want my customers to think that just because I had given birth that we didn't have, a team behind and like this whole business was gonna, like all these unbelievable standards that you kind of put yourself to when you're, running your own show. So I didn't really get back to anyone. I didn't hire anyone. And then I remember when he was 2 to 3 months old, I would basically like do all the emails in the longest stretch that he would sleep, which was between I think 11 p.m. and like 3 a.m. And that was, stretch of time that I would get all my work done. And I remember one day going through emails and I saw her email and it was like, I think it was February or March of 2019. And she was like, hey, Tia, I follow you and, saying that she's a freelancer and then kind of just ideas on what she would do differently with our social media and, ideas she had for our business. She had a little bit of experience with previous e-commerce brands that I knew. So it was kind of like, okay, let's hear what you have to say. So I met her at the Starbucks down the road. And I was like, okay, cool. What do we have to do to make this work? And she was like, you know what, we can do hourly. I can do it. She wasn't looking for a full-time job or anything. It was more like she had other clients. And so she came on board. First, she started with social media. She did an incredible job. A lot of the assets we have today, she did. And then slowly we handed over customer service. Again, this was very much like our baby and, our first baby who, and so I think it's a little harder to hand things off and delegate, especially at the beginning. I remember thinking, oh my God, no one can do customer service. Only I can do customer service. But yeah, no, she started picking up customer service. And then I think by the end of that year, end of 2019, is when we started talking about, hey, can you come on full time? And she said, okay, give me some time to kind of, give my other clients, notice. And so she came on board full time almost a year later, February 2020. She was the best first hire that I could have asked for. And I didn't even find her. She found me. Super grateful. And she took us from our basement to the warehouse and she helped us move and like I feel like she became a little sister to me over the 2 years that was it 2 years? Yeah, 2 years that she was with us. And then she got an opportunity. So we moved into the warehouse, we hired and then she got an opportunity, I want to say, yeah, this time last year. And she was like, Tia, this is the hardest thing. And I'm like, oh my God, you're leaving me. And yeah, I mean, like I feel, super grateful for the time that we had, but also I have a friend for life. It was the hardest thing when she left, and I don't want to get emotional, but like it was probably the hardest thing.
Well, I could tell your face change when you're talking about her. So that's amazing that she had that kind of impact on you, like professionally and personally. Like,
Yeah, and this is like, I don't know, I guess nursing hormones. I have no idea. No, I mean, and we have a great relationship now. She's traveling Portugal with her fiance. She has a 100% remote position, which I couldn't offer her at that time, and I can't offer her now because
yeah,
for her position, we needed that person to be in the warehouse and kind of oversee. She was overseeing both the office and the warehouse. And so it was probably the hardest thing. I mean, I remember calling up one of my mentors, unofficial mentors, Hitha. I remember reaching out to her, being like, "Hitha, my first hire, and this girl who I thought would be with me until I sold the company is quitting. I need to talk to someone." And I remember getting on the phone with her. I was a total emotional mess. And Hitha's like, "Okay, listen, and she's an investor, so she invests in women led companies." And she was like, "Yeah," she had an Alicia too. So her first hire was an Alicia, and she was like, "My Alicia left, and it was the hardest thing." And I've talked to so many other founders. That first person leaving is the hardest thing. And I don't want to say that you get used to it, but as you grow and as your team gets bigger, it's not that it's not as special, but it's not the same. And so you're not going to go through this 100 more times every time someone leaves. It's just that first. And I feel like because Alicia was very much part of the family. She's still a part of the family. She was here working, but she had a great relationship with Xavi, and she still does. And she came to all of our family things. Like it's a totally different relationship you have with that first hire. And yeah, so
so Alicia, shout out to you. We dedicated some time for you, but you seem amazing. Hope you're
yeah,
listening.
she's truly amazing.
So we'll get to we went from emotional to now we're going to go to, I guess, more analytical. So in e-commerce, one of the big metrics you kind of hear are customer acquisition costs. And because you had your own social media platforms that you kind of originally created content for, that kind of gave you a competitive advantage. Um, but the thing with social media is the finicky kind of algorithms, and you're kind of at the whim of like, Facebook, Meta, whatever you want to call it, or even like Google with like YouTube. How do you balance that? Because I didn't realize until I think I looked up your YouTube channel that you had like 95 million views, which is like insane. Uh, so I imagine that was part of your strategy at the beginning. And obviously like I heard about you through Instagram initially. So like, first of all, how did you decide which social media platforms you want to focus on? Is TikTok one of those platforms you're considering now or in the future? And then how do you navigate that finicky relationship where you you obviously get access to a wide group of people through social media, but ownership you had to kind of capture through like obviously email capture or like something on your website to have that direct relationship. So how do you navigate all of this stuff that I just said?
Honestly, when I started, I had no idea what I was doing. I think most of us don't, right? You kind of just make it up as you go. With Instagram, I found it really easy to navigate the algorithm changes because I am a very analytical person. I mean, that's what I did in my jobs. I got paid to be analytical. So I think sometimes it can work against you because you're too analytical. But with Instagram and social media in general, it definitely helps. So with Instagram, when I started, it was very much just pictures. And then it became video, which I like most people were like, this sucks, but I'm like, this is amazing because a drape is so easy to show in a video. And um it started with 1 minute videos. My 1 minute videos, I think at that time I didn't have that many followers. I had like 40, 50,000 followers, and some of my videos had like that many saves. Well, this is before reels and before just the one by one um uh what's that called, 1:1 ratio. So it wasn't the 9:16 ratio that we have now. But I think as things changed, I just was like, it was almost like a game for me. I find it so fascinating seeing patterns, analyzing things, and then experimenting. And I think that's a great thing about social media in general. You get instant feedback. And where else do you get instant feedback? I remember like my more corporate days, we'd be like, okay, let's try this ad and let's see what happens. You'd have to wait for the flyer to be printed and then see how it looks and then look at the results. Or even with, through corporate with social media, it would take forever. But whereas when it's your own social media page, you could try 17,000 experiments every single day if you wanted to, and I did. I feel like I experimented so much. And I think that's where I found a lot of the pivots that I needed to do to get to have sustained growth. And as I was, kind of saying at the beginning of this conversation, I think I was almost unhealthily obsessed with the growth. You don't get to, 800,000 plus followers without being some sort of obsessed with the growth, But again, I think, I always say this to my husband. I wish I had started this when I was 25 or 23. I started this, just after I got married. So I was very much looking forward to starting a family and, all of those other things that I wanted to do with my life and to make myself happy. And so I feel like now I'm in a place, I think even early last year, because I put a lot of pressure on myself because I'm like, okay, I have the space. We moved into our space in November 2020. So I didn't even finish that story, just a little pivot to kind of give you, we did this huge sale in April, which we looked at ourselves like, we need the space. And so we finally went back and we got the spaces. We moved in November 2020 and all of a sudden we had mortgage payments, and your cost for space goes from zero. We were paying like I think a percentage, to ourselves for our own mortgage in the basement, but now this was actual, money that was coming out. And so I put a lot of pressure on myself because now I can look at it with, a hindsight 2020 kind of mentality. And I saw the most amount of growth in my social media, November, December, January of 2020, 2021. But I can tell you that anyone who dealt with me during that time could tell you that like, wow, we have never seen Tia so stressed, because I was just like, okay, like I grew, I think probably more than 300 to 400,000 on Instagram in those 3 months. Cause I'm like, I have the space, I need to pay for the space. And then we had hired a videographer. We had to pay for her salary. It was a lot. And I think now I'm in a place where, and I think the business is also in a place where, social media growth does not mean sales, right? And so, so getting back to social media, anyway, the growth in terms of analytics, it's something I enjoy, but I think everything in moderation too. So, you can't just constantly be chasing that and not have it take over other parts of your life, like your health and your marriage.
Well, I think with a business, I think there's stages where it's almost like starting a fire. At the beginning, it's really hard to spark that fire. So you got to like be obsessed until that fire starts. And then at some point, it kind of, it's feeling itself, like the Kindle and all that's there. So it seems like you've kind of set up the infrastructure. You've done really all the hard work and like things to kind of be in a position where you are. So, and also I'd say that your other comment about wishing you were doing when you're young, when you started the business when you're younger, I often think that about like my business as well. But I also think I would have treated it differently if I didn't have someone that I had to like with my wife, I was accountable to her. Like, I'm spending my time doing this thing, I better deliver something. I can't just fool around, which I was doing before I met her. And also like now that I have kids, it's like, okay, I'm even more accountable of where I spend my time. So I guess it's like, kind of going back to the Manjula moment where like this thing happened, this small thing happened that made this crazy big result. I think it's the same thing with like timing of your business, where I think you might like, looking back, at least from my perspective, it seems like the timing made sense for you and kind of put you where you are. And who knows, maybe there wouldn't be a Tia Bhuva if you started it when you were 23, 24. That's just my thoughts, but you could totally disagree.
I agree. You know what? I think you're right, the accountability, but I think more so for me, it's the dealing with the haters.
Yes, yeah.
When people are like, well, you have 800,000 followers, that's great. And it's amazing. And it's allowed me to be where we are and allowed to me to build this business. And we wouldn't have this business if it wasn't for social media, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, all three of them feed into our business. But that also comes with a lot of not so great things too. And I think, thick skin is something that you absolutely need when you are putting yourself out there, right? And um, I think I think definitely my corporate jobs, especially at Walmart, allowed me to build thick skin because I was, my vendors were all older men, mostly white, who, saw this. And they were super nice. And I mean, they respected me because I had to buy stuff from them. So, but, but I feel like I feel like that time in my life. I mean, I was a buyer for 4 years. Really allowed me to build thick skin and not take a lot of things personally. I think back to my 22, 23-year-old self. And if I read some of the comments that I get now, I think she would have had some serious,
What kind
I
of
think it would have
comments?
affected her mental health.
What kind of comments are we
Um,
talking about? Out of
just
curiosity.
like just a lot of, I mean, just it's not nice things, right? But it can be like, oh, this is so ugly, or this just really
Like, is it
disrespectful
personal or
things.
is it like your products suck or is it like
It's
personal
personal.
attacks? Oh
Yeah,
wow,
the
okay.
product sucks stuff. I mean, yeah, that is great. I mean, I think any critical feedback you can get on your product, you should be super grateful for because that allows you to get better,
Mhm.
right? If no one is telling you what's wrong with your product, you're not going to make it better. And there are so many things that we've done to our product to make it better. It's not the same product that we had in 2018. Little tweaks here and there, and all of that came from customers.
Also, if
What even
nobody's
just
oh sorry, I was gonna say if nobody's giving you feedback, probably also means that nobody's buying your product because if you have a
exactly.
product, somebody's gonna tell you something about it. Yeah. So
Yes.
sorry, continue.
Yeah. So we take all feedback very seriously. I'm just saying, like, just a lot of just, but yeah, personal things too. And I think that's where, any creator, any influencer who puts their family on social media, I think from day one, my number one priority was not, it was growth, but growth in the right way. So I blocked anyone, usually a lot of males who were very disrespectful because at that time, if you think back to 2017, drape videos and, anything to do with the sorry world was very much like no one showed their face. Like if you went on YouTube, it was like this darkly lit video with no face and very not, I don't know what the word is. Like it wasn't a very, I guess, I don't even know what the word is to describe it, but it was not the, kind of
CD?
videos that you see today. Sorry?
Would you say CD is the right word to describe the videos? Like,
Yeah, it was just not very nice. And
oh
so a
okay.
lot of the comments on it would be super inappropriate and
Oh, okay.
super disrespectful. And so, my following today is I think 90 something percent female and, less males. And I think any of the males that are following me are, really for the business perspective, or maybe they do want to learn how to drape a sari. But a lot of that percentage was a lot lower, when I started growing. And that was because there was a lot of very inappropriate comments, and I
Mm.
was just like, I don't want to see it. Right. On social media, it's very much people are like, well, if you can't handle the bad comments, and it's like, well, would you allow someone to come into your house and say that to you, whether it's a male or female, right? And if not, then blocked and deleted. And I think I did a lot of that. It's like the whole broken window theory. If you allow one comment that is disrespectful or mean, not just to me, but just in between, like conversations that go on in your comments, then you're allowing more of that to happen. So yeah, so I think I did a lot of that at the beginning, but I mean it does get to you. Social media has this way of totally building you up, and it could also like make you feel like you're the greatest person on the planet, and it can also totally knock you down. And I think that support system has really helped me as well. But I think also just maturity and age. And that's why coming back to I'm glad, I'm happy and grateful that it didn't happen when I was younger because I don't know that I would have been able to deal with the negative and the hater comments too.
I know we talked a lot about kind of obviously you've experienced success, like you left a full-time job to this, you're kind of living quote unquote your dream life. But there's that classic in between state when you're doing a side hustle and that's growing. It's not like it's like kind of just like a zombie side hustle. It's like actually growing and you have a full-time business, and then you have to kind of make that decision, which you did. But like, how did you manage that in between phase where like, I can imagine like, you're working your corporate job, and then like, in the evenings, like you're like packaging, answering inquiries, and then just kind of doing it every day. And like your side hustle doesn't have a day off, unlike your corporate job. So it's like, unlike other people that have weekends and like time to like decompress away from work, you're constantly working. So how did you manage all of this?
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot. And if I think back to the year that our business really took off, so we started in 2017, it was 2018. 2018 was when I got pregnant. So April 2018, I was pregnant. I had a high risk pregnancy for the first 5 months. And so it was a really, really tough year. Um, but it was also a really good year. I think, yes, we were busy. We didn't take a vacation. I mean, all of 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, we didn't take a vacation. 2020 and 2021 was, not in our control.
Yeah.
But 2018 and 2019, we didn't take a vacation because, how could I leave, right? And it was very much in our house. So are we going to we started hiring a team. We had actually Alicia's two siblings still work for us today. They were two of our first pickers and packers.
Oh, you literally
And
brought her whole family in too, like
oh
her.
yes, yeah, and
Wow.
they still work for us.
Oh, amazing.
And yeah, they're amazing. But yeah, so they would be in our basement. Actually, funny story with that. One of the things that made us go from our house. So I told you March we backed out of our space, and then in April we ran this huge sale, and because we had inventory coming in to move into our space, and now we didn't have a space. Our space is like 7, 8 times bigger than our basement. So imagine that much inventory coming into our basement. We could have probably fit it, but there would be no space to move. And
Wow.
so Alicia and I looked at each other and we're like, what are we going to do? And she's like, I think we should just still, because April is our birthday month sale. It's my birthday. So it's kind of like our birthday sale. We've been doing it 2019. So 2020, it made sense to do it. We did it. And we basically went on social media and we're like, listen, guys, we have so much inventory. We're marking it down. Come and buy. And I think in April, people still had hope that June, July, things would return to normal. So we got all of these customers who had never bought from us buy one. And that's all it takes. It just takes one. You just need to feel one Saree silhouette on your body. And then you're like, okay, give me every color that I need for all of my sarees, right? So I think April just showed us that we actually did need the space. But because April was our biggest sales month ever up until that point, so this is in the middle of the pandemic, we're running the sale, biggest sales month. And if you remember, Ontario had a 5-person in the house limit. So I couldn't stay here because if my husband, Alicia, her sister, and her brother were here, me and Davy would be 6 people. So I would literally pack up my laptop, pack up Davy, go to my mom's house so they can come into our basement and fulfill and pick and pack all of these packages. Now, all of that sounds like a crazy story, but this is where it gets crazier. Because we did that, somebody, I don't know if it's a neighbor or I don't know who, complained, and we had the cops show up at our house. And
Oh,
it
wow.
gets even funnier because this cop basically he comes and he's like, I wasn't home, I was at my mom's, and Tony was like, yeah, we're running a business out of here. And he's like, well, do you have customers coming to the house? And Tony's like, no one knows where we live. We didn't even do customers before the pandemic. Why would we do customers now? And it was so funny because like literally as this cop was watching our house, AK Makeup, Anna, she came and she dropped off something for Zazie. And she got into her car. And as she got into her car, the cop went to ask Anna, is like, are you buying something from this house? And Anna's like, no, this is my friend's house, which is true. But then she calls me, she goes, yo, the cops are at your house. Like, is it like, are you like, are you not supposed to be running the business during the pandemic? And I'm like, no, there's nothing illegal about what we're doing. Anyway, the cop comes to the door and talks to Tony. And Tony's like, yeah, we're running a business, but we are an e-commerce company. We actually have 4 people in the house right now. And my wife and my son are at her, mom's house or her parents' house because make 6 with the baby. Apparently, you can get fined $100,000. At that time, you could get fined
Oh, wow.
$100,000 if you're
Crazy.
a business and you had more than 5 people in a residential place. If you're just residential and you had more than 5 people, it was $7,000. But if
Wow.
you're a business, it would have been 100,000. Anyway, that cop was Tamil. And so Tony goes, yeah, he's like, what kind of business are you running? And Tony's like, okay, do you want to come and see? Like, we're not doing anything illegal. Come downstairs to the basement, you can see. And the cop goes, and then Tony's like, well, are you Tamil? Like, he's like, yeah. So like, well, the girl that just came in last is AK Makeup. You probably know her. She does like a lot of Tamil brands. He goes, yeah, actually, my cousin hired her. And so it became that this cop obviously knew both myself and Anna. But he did say, he's like, listen, what you're doing is not illegal, but if a cop came, if you got another complaint, it could get messy, and, they could want to do a search and do a search warrant and blah, blah, blah. And that night, Tony's like, you need to move this out of our house. Like, you need to do it ASAP, because we're putting our family and our home in jeopardy because of this business. And so we literally called up the real estate agent again, and we're like, yeah, we want to buy. We want to go back to those sellers. And I think at that point, the sellers were pretty scared that they were not going to sell. And they actually gave us a better deal. So
It all worked. There you go. It worked out again.
It worked out. But why did I do this side? I don't even know why I told you this. Oh, that moment that where you're working really hard. I think there's been a lot of moments where we're like, why am I doing this? I did this so I could get more time with my family, but I'm not getting more time with my family. And I think 2018, 2019, 2020 was very much that. It was all about the business. And I'm saying, I'm talking as if, enjoying all of this is what we've been doing. No, this is like literally last 3 to 4 weeks. We're in a place where we can finally take a little bit. And again, you run your own business. You know that if you still have to be involved. You still have to, be there. But I think as you grow and you put the right team in place, it can be something where you're reaping the rewards after. But it took us a long time. I don't know. Is 3 years a long? I think 3 years is a long time to get.
I think that's actually pretty quick. I feel like.
Really?
Yeah, I think when people always say, "Oh, I'm going to start my own business, I'm going to hire people, it's going to be passive," I was like, "There's no such thing as passive if you're going to be an entrepreneur, unless like I don't know, you built like this massive company with many layers of management. Like up to a certain point, you're going to want to see every email. Like even now, like we have a team, and like I still look at emails when customers send them, because like I would respond to differently than they would, because I really care about like that this customer stays with us. So when people say, "Oh, must be nice," I was like, no, it's never passive. It's always on your mind. It takes up mental headspace.
Yeah.
There's some point eventually, maybe, like I think the only time you're not going to think about the business is when you sell it. So it's pretty much like your child until something happens, like you sell it or you go out of business. That's the only time it leaves your mind. So I don't know. That's just my take, but I could be wrong.
I completely agree. And I think, we've been approached to sell, and the offer always came with, oh, you have to stay on for 2 years. And I'm like, nope. Like, I want to get to a place where I can give you everything, the assets, the keys, take it, go with it, and I'm out of here. I don't want to. I think if we get to that point, when we get to that point, hopefully,
Well,
at some
that's a good segue into like my next question was going to be like, do you see yourself running tiabhuva.com for the next 10 years? And like, what would make you reconsider? Like, you said like you've had offers, but you've said no. So what would it take to get you to sell? And then what would be that thing that you do? Because I listen to a ton of podcasts where like entrepreneurs have sold their businesses. The number one thing they say they underestimated was that business was so much of their identity, and it was like a platform for them as well for so many different things, self-improvement, for them to speak on things. And like they had a whole family of like employees. Then it was gone, but they made good money. But then it was like, oh, like what do I do now? What's my identity around? I'm kind of bored. So yeah, just curious, like what would that thing post sale look like for you if you ever considered selling? Money can be hard to come by, but here's $100 opportunity for you. Join my free newsletter for free exclusive content and a free chance to win $100 when I hold special draws. Did I mention that it's free?
Yeah, so I think that's one of the reasons I started a new account. It's Tia BU, and it's very much, I'm not focusing a lot of time on it right now. And the reason, I don't think I've never shared this publicly. We Alicia and I, we tried when she was here last year and like probably better part of 2020 to kind of rebrand tiabhuva.com and be like, because I knew that if I ever, I think when I started getting approached to, do you want to sell? I was like, well, then I have to give up tiabhuva because we have tiabhuva.com, which is the Instagram business page. And then we have tiabhuva, which is very much my page. It is like the grid is all to do with business, but stories is very much me. And I think there's a lot of people who have no interest in ever wearing a sari or purchasing, but they just follow it for other things that I share, like lifestyle, motherhood, things like that. And so I always thought that if I was to sell, I would keep tiabhuva and sell tiabhuva.com. But I realized that I couldn't do that. So we tried to rebrand. We were like, okay, what could we rename it? And we knew that whatever name we came up with had to be amazing. And we didn't get there. So I think I came to the conclusion that if I was to sell, I would probably have to give up tiabhuva as well. And as much as I think the business is, an identity and like, part of my identity, and I'm not going to just sell to anyone. I feel like I would definitely have to, sell to someone who maybe an existing company that, is very aligned with our products, or, someone who I think would take it further than I could ever take it. And if I was to sell, I think I want to get to a point, because all I know in the last, since 2017, there wasn't a day where I woke up and I'm like, I'm going to take today off. I would love that. And I think, I know like you, I've listened to so many, entrepreneurs who have sold and regretted it, stayed on, regretted it, left, regretted it. But then I think there are people who sold and were super happy. And I think what they did differently was they had a plan for what they were going to do afterwards. And so I think for the first 2 to 3 months, I am going to not log on to social media. I'm going to wake up and be like, I don't have to post a story today. Not that I hate it. It's just, I think it gets to a point where you feel like you have to. And I have taken a lot of breaks now, but yeah, I think just read for the first 3 to 4 months. Because I think that's my dream life, like literally waking up, spending time with the kids and then reading, and reading whatever I want to read, not because I have to read to learn to do something that I have to do for the business or something like that. But I think after that, I think I would want to consult for a while. I think what I enjoy the most right now, and I don't know about you, is talking to other people about their businesses and being like, I think I come at it from a perspective of, we were over indexed or overexposed or whatever the word is in social media. A lot of people aren't. And, they're always like, okay, working with influencers, but I feel like sometimes, the influencer world is like this huge money sink that you don't really know if it's going to work for you. And I think those are the things, like I would want to consult in some capacity. And then I think I would want to try other ideas that I have. There's so many things that I'm not doing right now because tiabhuva.com takes up so much of my time. We started a Mayhem, which is still going strong, and it surprises me how much sales we get, even though I don't even talk about it. Like it's like one of those passive things. But we wear it. Like I wear it, and I have a bunch of people who absolutely love it. So I think it's a lot of word of mouth too. And we work on it here and there, but it's not a lot. But I think there's a lot of things that I want to do, totally not in the fashion space, and totally unrelated, that I would love to explore.
Yeah, you nailed it. I think I would say in the last 4 or 5 years, I've been like obsessed with like the FIRE movement, which is the underlying idea is like real freedom is ownership of time. And like you said, like what does my dream day look like? And like when most people ask, like they expect something crazy, but it's like your answer. It's like just really waking up and not having to think about it. I don't know what that's like. Like for me, it's been like a while. Just like waking up and like, I don't know, just hanging out with the kids, going for like a long walk and listening to a podcast, hanging out with friends, just stuff like that. So that is something like not that I feel like I'll get there hopefully in the next couple of years, but it's like something I dream about. But it's like, but I also feel lucky in that I do own a lot of my time now. It's not like my ideal, but I do own more of my time than say somebody that works for somebody else. So I am thankful for that. So it's really nice hearing your answer as well. Like you said, you don't like, you hear those answers, but not like, it's not very common. So it's nice to hear it from I guess somebody else that kind of looks like you as well. So yeah, because like a lot of the podcasts I listen to, a lot of the entrepreneurs are typically like white. So you don't like, I don't get to hear a lot from like, I guess people of color. Like I don't, maybe I haven't found the right podcast, but
You
that's
know who I
something.
think you would love? Naval Ravikant. Have you heard of him?
Yeah, I've heard Naval. Yes, I
Have
have.
you heard his like talks on happiness and like just
Yes,
wealth, everything?
yeah, he's really smart guy.
Yeah,
Like next
yeah,
level.
yeah. I
um,
think he's figured it out. I think he's figured out what we're all after and has put it and packaged it in such a simple way. And I
yes.
love going back and listening to his interviews because I'm like, oh, that's why I'm working so hard. Okay, let's
Yeah,
recalibrate, you know? So
that's amazing. So this part of it is kind of the, it's not really part of it. It's like more like a reflective part, but I'm curious, like you growing up, were there any signs or indications that eventually you would become an entrepreneur, like do what you're doing today? Or like, or is it like your childhood was just kind of like, you always thought you'd be doing something else and there's nothing there to kind of indicate you'd eventually become an entrepreneur?
childhood, I don't think
Or
so.
like even
I
like your
think,
formative teenage years?
yeah, I think teenagers, I decided in grade 10, because I remember, I think we had a talk with like with the guidance counselor, and he was just basically like, okay, well, you can do the side, like he put out all of the, like if you wanted to go into law school or if you wanted to go, you know, into medicine. And I just remember thinking everything sounds like closing doors, like a lot of closed doors to everything else except for business, because business, I could work in accounting and I could work in marketing and I could work in, you know, anything, and then eventually start my own business, which is what I ended up doing. And yeah, I think for me it was all about not being tied to one thing and having the flexibility to kind of pivot and change. And I think that's what I love. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, I think that's what they love. It's no 2 days are alike. And you can make your business whatever you want it to be. You don't want to do something higher. You want, you know, more control. Take that for what you know. Take that for what it is you do. And I remember listening to even Sarah Blakely, who is a huge inspiration for me. And she was like, when she started, she was super focused on product development, but then she, you know, as her company grew, she got away from it and it made her so unhappy. And then she finally, you know, in a reflection session, she realized, oh my God, it's because I'm not involved in product development anymore. And I think there is no other career path, even if you're not an entrepreneur, there's no other career path where you can pivot that many times and still be in the same, you know, kind of career path, right? There's
Yeah.
no other, and I think that's, I think I knew I wanted to do business since I was, you know, probably in grade 10. But when I was a kid, yeah, I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to be a McDonald's cashier. I wanted to be a lawyer. There were so many things that I wanted to be, but business was not on my radar until probably high school.
Also, the skills you learn as an entrepreneur are very transferable. Like for me, like you said, like whatever I do next, well, if it's another business, will not be related to what I'm doing now in technology. I think it'll be more like creative, even though I'm not like this podcast or like writing a book or like film. Like I love that kind of stuff. But I feel like the process oriented nature of being an entrepreneur, like when you're setting up processes, how to delegate, all that stuff is very applicable to even how I create this podcast is very like my brain is very analytical. Like that's how I think. Like here's how I break down the black box. I do the same thing here. So I think the skills you learn are very transferable to any other skill, even parenting. Like how me and my wife parent. It's like everything is a process. Like this is what we do at this time. So we're kind of scared that our kids will become too rigid, but that's like another discussion. But yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. And if you were to go back to 16-year-old Tia, you know, in a time machine, you got to sit with her face to face, what's something you would tell her? Or like, what would you tell her?
So it's funny. So I saw this question on your email and I'm like, I would tell her nothing. I would tell her nothing because 16-year-old Tia was always looking for shortcuts. Because I remember I needed to get a certain average, and I got it for midterms. Then your finals didn't matter, and so I totally just slacked. And I remember the business teacher coming up to my parents at graduation at high school and telling my parents, "Oh, she would have had the business award, but she went from the top student to like the 10th or something." I remember because she stopped trying. And I feel like I'm very much that way, which is, and more so when I was younger. Okay, I did what I had to do, clocking out, you know? Um, I mean, I was a good student, so I never, my parents never really got involved in my schooling. Like they didn't even tell me ever to do my homework because I always did it. And I was always, you know, I always had good grades. So I think 16-year-old Tia needs to hear nothing, because if I told her, you know, that she would figure it out and that, you know, one day she would be living a life that, you know, she would really like, she might start slacking. So I wouldn't tell her anything. But 26-year-old Tia, I would tell her, because 26-year-old Tia, I moved to Korea because I was, you know, going through my quarter life crisis, you know, hoping to find, you know, this great business idea that I could start. You know, I had worked for HP, Citigroup. I think at that time, yeah, I think I left with HP. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do, you know, and all my friends were getting married. They had all, you know, started with the company at 22 and worked their way up, and they, you know, were 26, you know, getting senior director, whatever, senior manager, director roles. And here I was, you know, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was trying to apply for jobs, not getting anything, because obviously I had jobs, and then I went to Korea and then I came back, and I was so lost. And I was just like, maybe all of my dreams aren't going to come true, and maybe like I aim too high. And I think if it wasn't for, like, my parents were super supportive, they never asked me why. Like, they had spent so much money on my education, and, you know, I was promised to do great things, but they never once asked me, like, what are you doing, why aren't you applying for anything? I worked with my dad for a bit. I think at 26, I just felt like a failure, and I didn't want to go to parties, or, I mean, I'm a very extroverted person. I love people and I love being around people, but I didn't want to go anywhere where people would be like, "What are you doing?" Or, "Are you, like, you know, is your daughter getting married?" Or, you know, those questions that, I don't know, like every South Asian kid and parent go through in their 20s. I think I would tell her, hang in there. It's going to be fine. You're going to meet a great guy. You know, you're going to work at Walmart. You're going to love your time there. You're going to be challenged. You're going to learn so much. And then you're going to start this amazing business in sarees. I don't think she would have believed me, but I would have wanted to tell her, like, everything's going to be fine, because I think she needed to hear more from me than the 16-year-old one.
And looking forward, what would you want your personal legacy to be in terms of how you want to be remembered by friends and family?
Yeah, so I read this question, and I stopped, because I realized that, like I said, you know, the business has taken up so much of my life um in the past 4 years, that I think I've let a lot of relationships suffer as a result. You know, I think, not just in terms of time. So there's like friends that, you know, you don't see as much because you're so busy. And, you know, events that you don't go to because there's something going on with the business that you need to take care of. And then there's also the strained relationships with, you know, your husband or your mom or your kids, because you're so stressed about something with work, right? And I mean, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the unwavering support of my husband or my mom, who just drops everything to come take care of the kids when we have to do something or shoot something or set up something at the office. And I think you know, that question made me realize that there's a lot of priorities that I have to reorganize, especially now that I feel like I don't have to do it all, and that I can be more present. Isn't that what we're all, you know, working towards anyway? So I think that my goal for this next part of my life, not that I'm gonna, you know, close up tboob.com or anything like that, I'm talking like I am, but is just to be more present, and maybe let the business take a back seat. I have been doing that a lot lately. And yeah, the growth in terms of social media isn't great, but like you said, once you've set up certain things in the business, it doesn't skip a beat, and the team can handle it. And I think every day that I see that happen makes me realize that, you know, I need to go back to why I started. And I hope my personal legacy is that I made time for those people that matter the most. And that, like, when I think about Tony, my mom, my dad, you know, my mother-in-law, like our immediate, you know, circle of family and friends, I hope they feel that I made time for them.
Great answer.
And yeah.
And that's a good way to segue into the final part of the podcast. It's a fun game that I like to call Creator Confessions. It's a speed round. So I'm going to say a bunch of statements and you tell me the first thing that pops to mind. Ready?
Okay.
Favorite Tamil food?
Oh my, why did biryani come to mind? It's not biryani. It's probably dosa. Yeah, probably dosa.
Something that scares you?
Ghosts.
What's an insecurity you have?
Oh my goodness. What's an insecurity I have that I say too much?
Favorite show you're watching?
I'm not really watching anything right now, but the first thing that came to mind was Suits. I really like Suits.
A place you're itching to travel to?
Costa Rica.
Great place. Another Tamil creator you want to give a shout out to, or creators?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so many people who have helped me. Anna being number one. I mean, she's the reason I started on Instagram. Tanya, who is a great business, who I think you featured her. Love
Yes.
her products. Her swaddles are the best. Kitchen Gorilla, who, I mean, if anyone follows me on Instagram knows how much I love their shred gelato. I hate mutton curry, but his mutton fries, oh my goodness. So spicy. I need to take, oh, you know how when you go to Rio in Jaffna, they give you like mutton rolls and then ice cream? Well, this is the Canadian version where it's like mutton fries and then ice cream. And it is the best. Who else? So many. I feel like there's so many that's coming to mind that I'm not remembering, but I feel like, yeah, I feel like there's just a huge list of people.
I like Curacao, the gelato. I didn't think I would like it
What,
because I don't like the dessert, but that ice cream is
Same.
probably my favorite ice cream I've ever had. So
I hate milk tea. Like I hate the Sri Lankan tea. I love the Sri Lankan coffee, but I hate like the milk tea that all of our moms make.
yeah,
But that Ceylon milk tea ice cream,
yes,
like
it was
the
good
straw
too.
gelato, like oh my goodness, so good. But so I feel like so many of his gelatos are like that. They take the good stuff from that flavor, and it's very authentic. But even if you don't like that actual thing, it's fine. You're gonna love the gelato. So
That's why he's a food artist.
yeah.
Favorite
You should
childhood.
feature him. I would love to hear all the aspects of his story that I feel like you don't really get into
Oh, I
in
would love to.
conversation.
He
Yeah.
he was going to, but he got busy with his launch of the store. So he's been busy with that launch, but hopefully one day.
Yeah.
Favorite childhood memory.
Oh my goodness. So many, but I think the one I was thinking about this because when you asked the childhood story, or if there was any, clues that I would be doing what I'm doing today, and it came to mind, but it had nothing to do with, entrepreneurship. It was, so I was born in Sri Lanka, in Jaffna. Both my parents were teachers, and I moved to Canada when I was 5. So between 0 and 5, I don't have many memories, but some of my favorite memories are of my mom coming home. She would wear sarees to school every day, and she would take off her saree and put it on the bed, and I would get yelled at for trying to drape myself. And it's funny because I didn't ever think that this is what I would be doing. Like nothing in my sarees in particular or South Asian fashion. But I feel like if you were to do like clips from my whole life and you saw that clip, you'd be like, oh, okay, this makes sense. That's why she has a saree business, because she was obsessed with it before she was 5.
Something that you like to do for fun outside of work.
Read. I love
Fa-
reading.
Favorite film of all time, and you can do either English, Tamil, or both.
The first thing that came to mind was Jeans. I've probably watched that movie as a child. I haven't watched it in a long time, but I probably watched it when I was like 10 or 12 when it came out.
It
Like
had some
I
great
don't know,
songs in
500
it.
times. Yeah, loved all the songs.
Yeah.
Loved the movie. Obsessed with Aishwarya Rai. I think Prashant. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of him, but I loved the movie. Besides
Yeah,
it.
I didn't watch some movies for a while, but I think the last 1 or 2 months, I think on Amazon Prime, I've been just watching randomly at night Tamil movies. I don't know,
Really?
something nostalgic about. I think it reminds me of like my childhood for some reason.
Are there new ones or are they doing old ones?
They do some old ones and some new ones. They do both.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty
Okay,
good
I
on
should check
Amazon
it
Prime.
out.
Yeah.
I should check it out.
A purchase you've made recently in the last few years that you have zero regret about.
Oh my gosh, so many things. What am I going to talk about? What have I bought? I'm trying to think of something that I use every day. Because I love this question. Tim Ferriss asked this question: best under $100
Yeah,
purchase you
actually, I
made.
borrowed that and I tweaked it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh my
He had
gosh,
that
now
in
it
his
needs to be good.
he had that in his book, Book of Titans, I think, which is why I like that question. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I have that book as well. I'm just trying to think. Okay, I bought this high chair. This is top of mind right now. So if you're not a parent, you probably don't care. But I bought this high chair right before our trip, and I didn't have it with Xavier, my first son, but I bought it for Isaac. And it's basically this high chair that you can get on Amazon. If you search for I think it's floating high chair or travel high chair, it basically attaches to any table, and it has no legs, and it's like it comes in this like pouch that is the size of probably a little bit bigger than your laptop, and like a MacBook Air laptop, like a little bit bigger than that. So it's super easy to travel with. And I mean, you're a parent, so you know high chairs everywhere are so gross and you cannot wipe them enough. Just bring your own high chair.
Yeah.
And it fits most tables. I wouldn't recommend putting it onto one of those like plastic picnic tables, but everything else is fair game. And it like the clamp works to, accommodate. I think that was probably the best purchase because we use it every day. And Tony rolls his eyes every time a Amazon purchase makes its way to our door, which is probably every day. But he like told me multiple times, this was the best purchase you've ever made. And I'm like, I know. It's a good product. So yeah.
Pet peeve.
Oh my goodness, pet peeve. People just not being like, when people are just not upfront. Like, it's fine if it's a bad news, just tell me it upfront.
Don't sugarcoat it at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
If you knew that you were gonna die tomorrow, a regret that you would have.
Oh my goodness. A regret that I would have. I think I'm working to make sure I don't have this regret, but if I was to die tomorrow, I would have this regret is just more time with family and not working as much.
A person whose life, or a celebrity person, somebody you want to experience their life for just one day.
Oprah.
A new belief, behavior, or habit that has improved your life.
I think like asking myself, trying to get out of the situation, because I feel like, as entrepreneurs, we kind of get into the weeds and the details so much. And if you do something is always going to piss you off. I think Tony Robbins said this in one of his podcasts. He's like, when you run, any more than one or more businesses, there's something going on somewhere that's going to piss you off. And if you just look for that, you're always going to be pissed off. And so making a conscious decision to kind of zoom out when I feel the need to go, oh my God, this is doom and gloom. This is going to, be the worst thing ever. Usually it never is, but I think just be able to zoom out.
Yeah. When you were saying that, one thing I quickly thought of was whenever I reflect on things that I thought were bad in the moment, but when I zoom out, it's like, oh, I'm so glad that happened. And, not the good thing happened because this would have happened. And from that bad thing, this came. So I definitely agree with that. It's really hard to do though in the moment. So I try to do that with my kids, especially where they get annoying and like, I want to yell, but I know if I yell, it's a really bad thing, like especially for the short term. And in the long term, who knows how I can affect them. So that always gets me to think, slow down before I react. So yeah. And finally, a piece of advice that you would give to your fellow aspiring Tamil creators out there.
Like creators or entrepreneurs, like Instagram or?
I would say creators, like, so I like the word creator because I think it encompasses
everyone.
It could be everyone.
Okay, so if it's everyone, I would say find out what your non-negotiables are and try to be non-negotiable about them. So this is as much advice to myself as it is to everyone else. There's things that I do every day that make me a happier person, both my experience of my life, but also how other people experience me. And those things are, meditating, journaling, taking the time to read, whether it's just like, for 10 minutes. I think those are things that ground me. And when I don't do them, because, something else is pressing, whatever that pressing thing was doesn't get done properly either. So I've come to realize there's certain things in my life that are non-negotiable, whether I'm going to meditate for 1 minute and read for 3 minutes and, so that time is not the reason that I'm saying I don't have time to do it. So find out what your non-negotiables are and make sure that you always do them.
Amazing. Well, that was a great way to end off the podcast. Tia, thank you for making time to connect. Amazing story. Lots of really good insights for you entrepreneurs out there. If someone's listening to this and they're inspired, they want to connect, what's the best way for someone to reach out to you?
Yeah, so you can reach out on Instagram. I would say Tia Bhuva, but a lot of things go missed. So you can email me at tia@tiabhuva.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. And for those of you listening, appreciate you guys listening as always. And thanks again, Tia.
Thank you.